So good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirits book. We are finishing Spirits, Occupations, and Missions. We're going to start today on question 580 that I'm not sure we did last week or not, but let's start with it. That's the first one on the page. Okay?
Yes. When a spirit incarnates to complete a mission, does it feel the same anxiety as a spirit about to endure a trial? No, because it has experience.
So the spirit may come for an atonement, the different experiences during their physical lives, right? Their incarnations. Could be an atonement, which is a consequence of something that we did wrong in the past and we have to make amends. A trial, which is an opportunity to learn something that we haven't learned yet, opportunity of growth, but not related to anything in our past. And a mission, which is a special task that will benefit those besides ourselves, right? Because a trial is for our personal learning. An expiation or atonement is for our personal repair of mistakes we made in the past. But a mission goes beyond our own personal growth to help others. And what they say here, of course, a spirit that comes on a mission has less anxiety as a spirit about to endure a trial because he has more experience. You are not going to come on a mission if you are not prepared, somehow prepared to fulfill the mission. Of course, in a couple of questions, we're going to talk about parenthood, and then we are going to talk of a type of mission that it is a mission, but we look around and you see many that we don't think are prepared, right? But it is a mission. But before that, let's 581.
It is obvious that those who enlighten the human race by their genius have a mission, but there are many who make mistakes, and while they may discover important truths, they spread serious errors. How should we view their missions? As having been falsified by themselves, they are not fit for the task they have undertaken. In judging them, however, you must take into account the circumstances in which they were placed. People of genius have had to impart knowledge according to the structures of their time, and while teachings may later appear to be erroneous or foolish, they may have been suitable for the time when they were discovered.
This is very important, right? Let's think of a genius of 600 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci, right? That left so many wonderful discoveries and so many different things that it is said that at a certain point in his life, he decided to isolate himself from the rest of the world because he said that he had nothing else to learn from anyone else, which is very possible because he was so ahead of his time. But, and again, I don't know the details, I don't know the inventions, but is it possible that Leonardo da Vinci brought something that was not what's wrong? Yes, it is possible, but he was limited by the time that he lived, right? So when he was the first one to design a helicopter, right? Can we build an helicopter with what he designed 600 years ago? Probably not, right? Probably it's not going to fly. But again, the limitations of the time, of what he knew, what he was available to him at that time, was what he had to deal with. And more important, even the spirits that come on missions, they are imperfect spirits. Only Jesus was the perfect spirit incarnated here. All the other spirits are imperfect. And if we are imperfect, we have limitations. We're not perfect. So we have limitations. And maybe those limitations are going to to make us make mistakes on our missions. It doesn't make it less important, right? When we talk about, for instance, Albert Einstein, right? A more recent genius that we had. They say that in his personal life, he was a very difficult person to live with. He was very cruel to those around him. The responsibility of the cruelty that he has had towards those around him is his own responsibility. It's something that he will have to come to atone. But the merit of what he left for humanity fulfilled his mission. So it's important for us to understand the balance, right? They say the same thing about Martin Luther King, right? The mission that we can see clearly, the lessons that he left to us, the advancement that he brought for humanity was very important. But they say that he was not very good in family relations, right? Apparently he was not faithful to his wife. He was not very paternal to his children. It doesn't matter. Matters to him. He has to face the consequences, but it doesn't matter to us, right? For us, the important thing is the mission, right? When we study Nelson Mandela, right? Before he went to prison, he did some things that were, he was violent in the terms of the things that he did. He was arrested for some violence that he did. But the change that he had during his time in prison and the lesson he brought to us, how to live 30 years in prison and then leave and not blame or not condemn those that made him spend 30 years in prison. I don't think any of us can even get close to be capable of doing that. Now, you look at his personal life, a lot of issues there, right? He had several wives or more than one wife and some problems with their wives. That's his personal problems. It doesn't concern us, right? Concerns him, and he will have to deal with. So it's important for us when we look at these examples to think about, of course, we're not missionaries, but to think about ourselves. If we are working to help others and we are benefiting others, that's what really matters. Our personal problems is our personal problems, but for the world, the work that we can do to help others is what really matters. And we shouldn't be discouraged by our own personal issues that we all have from doing what we have to do to benefit others. Anything that we do, work in a hospital, work in a giving food, whatever we choose to do, right, in terms of helping others. The important thing is that we try to do some work to help others. Maybe it's taking care of an old family member, parent. That's the mission, right? That we can, everything that goes beyond ourselves and benefit others is a mission that we can do as little as it looks, but it is a mission and we can consider a mission. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's very important where the Spirit also tell us to be careful in our judgment of what's correct and what's correct, that you have to go back to the time in which that thing happened. So today, people will say there's a lot of errors in, let's say, in Darwin's law of theory, not a law, theory of evolution. But at that time, there was nothing better or even to make an analysis, not even him to make any correction. So everything was absolutely perfect for the time that he published what he published. Now, thanks to him, we can go back and verify, oh, here there is a little problem, there is a little problem. So you need to be able to be humble enough to put yourself back at the time. Don't be judging the individual like that. And another point is they may bring that they could perhaps bring greater truth, but the time was not right. You cannot bring too much light and blind people. You have to go and take time. So you need to be very careful on the way you are judgmental of the work of other people.
Yeah, now you talk about spiritism, right? And Kardec. If Kardec had, if this happened 100 years before when it happened, he wouldn't. He would be burned at the stake, right? It wouldn't happen. Like he was burned at stake as Jan Hus, right? The Czech previous incarnation of Kardec. So everything comes at the time. And how many times we talk about things that that we discuss here that we have to take in consideration the time it was written, right? To understand the truth, the eternal truth, but at the time it was what the spirits always say, that's what we can tell. You don't have words to define it, right? And I was preparing myself for something that I'm doing tomorrow, and in the Medium's book they talk about perispiritual fluid, right? And then Kardec makes a footnote saying perispiritual fluid is something that the spirits are bringing the words they are using because we don't have any different words to use. So it's not exactly what they mean, but it is what they have, right? You know, if you go with a cell phone to the middle of a jungle to try to explain to someone living in the jungle that never saw a cell phone, they don't have words for you to talk about it, right? So everything has to be put in context for us to understand this genius of the times, appreciate, and they allow us to move forward. And that's what's really important, right? When we talk about all these figures that I mentioned, they allow us to move forward. I was the other day I was listening to that famous astronomist that is all over the news. What's his name? I forgot his name. And they asked him who is the greatest genius in terms of physics, right? And he says Newton. Newton is the one, because what Newton brought, that was not even close. He said, even compared to Einstein, Newton was more important, right? And the work that Newton did, it's not 100% perfect, right? There are some issues here and there, but at the time, it was something extraordinary. All right, let's talk about parenthood now.
582. Can parenthood be considered a mission? There is no question that it is a mission. It is a serious duty, the responsibilities of which will exercise a much more significant impact on people's future than a person might think. God has placed children under the guidance of its parents so that they can direct the child to goodness and integrity. God has even facilitated their task by giving the child a weak and gentle physical makeup, completely open to new impressions. However, there are many parents who put more effort into pruning trees in their gardens and making them bear a large crop of fruit than the time they devote to molding the character of their children. If the child fails and it is the fault of the parents, they will suffer the atonement of their failure, and the suffering of the child in a future life will be assigned to them because they have not done their part in helping the child advance on the road to happiness.
Okay, so parenthood is a mission, but before we all start regretting the mistakes we made with our children, most of us here that have adult children, it's also according to our knowledge, understanding, and evolutionary level at the time that we are raising our children, right? Probably you know things today that we didn't know when we were raising them, for those that have adult children. For those that still are going to have children, please go back to this question before your child is born and reread it. We can only be responsible for what we knew. When we talk about expiation, atonement, we are not responsible for mistakes we make for lacking of knowledge as a learning process. So a trial, an opportunity for us to learn something new. You learn, and then you come again, you have another opportunity, and then you knew how to do it and you did it wrong, then you create a karma for you. Then it's a responsibility. But if you never heard of something and you are seeing for the first time and you make a mistake, there's no responsibility, right? Again, let's think about children, right? When they make mistakes when they are 1 year old, you are going to put them on timeout, 2 minutes of timeout, and then they forgot what they did. And there is no. Now, when you are talking about a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, they know what they're doing, some of the things that they do, right? Especially when they become teenagers and all hell breaks loose, right? So now, as parents, we have the responsibility to prepare them to the best of our abilities. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. Of course, we're going to have regrets. That's part of our journey, our learning experience. But if we look back and we see that according to the conditions that we lived at the time that we were raising them, the effort that we made considering everything around us, we did not the best that we could, because we could always have done better. We are always going to say, oh, I could have done better. I could have done different. It's easy to look back and think of different things that we could have done, but we cannot let's start feeling guilty and start blaming ourselves for what we did with our children. They are independent spirits. They are eternal spirits. They bring their own baggage. Our responsibility is to mold, to try to control their inferior tendencies, and to try to prepare them for the future. But in the end, as we're going to see in the next question, they have their own responsibility also. It's not only on the parents. The parents have the responsibility. And if a parent abandons a child, they're going to face the consequences in future lives, right? There was a question on our Q&A Sunday that was interesting, right? That she asked about surrogate mothers, right? And what's the role of a surrogate mother in the child's life and in the parents, adoptive parents, or not adopted? Maybe it's she's only carrying the baby, right? And I mentioned one of the possibilities is exactly that. She didn't did a good job of taking care of that spirit when she had the opportunity. So now she has the opportunity of at least giving an opportunity for he or she be born and then be raised by another family. It's one of the many possibilities of a surrogate mother. So yes, we are going to face consequences if we make mistakes knowing that we are making the mistake. If we are making mistakes raising them because we didn't know better, because it was impossible for life circumstances, we should give a break to ourselves, okay? I know we have many parents here, so it's a message for all of us that I'm sure would like to have done things a little better in one way or another. There's always a reflection that we have, right? Okay, questions, comments, help me.
Yeah, when the Spirit says God has placed children under the guidance of its parents so they can direct the child to goodness and integrity, I don't think there's any bigger vote of confidence, to designate one of the children or the Spirit say, here, lead this kid to goodness and integrity. So for one thing, it means that we have within us the goodness and the integrity, because we cannot give what we don't have. Right? So every human being has the potential of bring goodness and integrity to their kids. It leads me to believe that because we have it within us. So the responsibility of the parents is immense in that point, because God did not give you a mission that you would not be able to fulfill.
Yeah.
Well, I also see here, that's my understanding. When they say that many parents who put more effort to pruning the trees in their garden than make them than instead of taking care of the kids. I see this very actual in the sense that a lot of parents are working parents, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But instead of giving attention to the kids when they go back home, they are on the phones, they are doing this and they're doing that. So it's a lot of material things. Instead of taking care of the kids, giving attention to the kids, oh, here, there's a new toy, there's a new thing, that's instead of, so it's very, for me, that's my way to understand, that's very actual in this sense of the parents thinking about material things instead of giving attention to the kids, sit down and play with the kids.
Yeah, one problem that we see nowadays is parents delegating the responsibility of raising the children to schools, to grandparents, and it is the responsibility of the parents. And what you said, if they work, that's fine, that's part of life, but it's not the amount of time, is not the quantity, it's the quality. You have to spend quality time with your kids, right? With your children, because that's what's going to make a difference. But yes, it's very easy to put our children in front of the TV, of the video games, and so to allow them to occupy the time of our children. And it is a lack of responsibility on parenthood, and we will have to face the consequences if we are allowing our children to be raised by others, not by ourselves, right? Of course, you can have parents say, well, but they don't listen to us. But we should lead by example, right? Because they pay attention more to our actions than to our words. If we lead by example, they will learn from it. And I've heard young adults talking about their parents as the examples that they gave in terms of what they were doing, how they were taking care of things, and things like that. Because many times when you talk to your children, they prefer to listen to their colleagues at school, to TV. They don't pay attention to what we say, but they always pay attention to our examples, how we behave ourselves in life, right? So at least in that sense, if we could make ourselves as good examples for them, it is something that can make a difference, right? Okay.
And of note, you see here the Spirit speak of parents in the plural.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yeah, because a lot of fathers think that the responsibility is of the mothers, right? And in reality, it's a shared responsibility. Yes, Anna.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I think that was the point I was going to make as well, because I do feel sometimes a parent is left alone to care for children, and there are difficult times sometimes, and a parent comes home, has to cook dinner. You have to put the child in front of TV to cook dinner. You're alone, and there are a number of other situations, right? It's not the always you're not always delegating the raising of the children to TV and computers and phones. It is in some cases the circumstances, so it's hard to judge when this happens. But I also had a question around when at some point it feels like, and perhaps that's wrong, but it feels like when your parents feel more like your children. It gets to a point where they're no longer responsible for you. Of course, you're an adult, and then you, to some extent, become responsible for them. And it's not very clear whether this is the always the right way to go. It seems to be very cultural, and in some cases, I feel parents also fail to consider how life is going to be further down the line for their children, so they don't have to take care of them forever. So I think that's also part of a responsibility of modern times of parents to be thinking of ways of not becoming a burden to children. Not that parents are always a burden, no, not at all, but it can become overwhelming. I saw a study this week that it feels that people in their 40s and 50s in this generation are quite overwhelmed because they're around the time where their children still need them, and then their parents start to need them, and then you're also at a time in your career that is pretty heavy, and then yes, definitely you end up uh, probably addicted to TV and other things. Yeah, but thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Anna. The role of taking care of parents is also part of this mission, right? Because especially if you have parents that took very good care of you, it's your responsibility to take care of them if they need, right? It's not always easy because it involves other things, right? But again, it's part of our responsibility as eternal spirits to take care of those around us. The mission can be take care of a nephew. Some people have to take care of nephews, of grandchildren. So depends on when we talk about children here in terms of parenthood, we can extend this to a lot of other relatives, right? Parents, neighbors, that we should take care of those that need our care and that we can help, if possible, right? According to our possibilities and our limitations. But yes, thanks, Anna. Now, of course, we can do our best, and yet children go wrong. So what happens then? Philip.
583.
Yeah.
If children go wrong despite their parents' care, are the parents responsible? No. But the more hateful the disposition of their children, and the more difficult their task, the greater their reward if they succeed in keeping them away from wrongdoing. If children become good adults despite the negligence or bad example of their parents, do the parents obtain any benefit therefrom? God is fair.
Okay, so here, two different cases, right? Very good parents did the best that they could, and the child becomes a difficult adult in whatever sense, right? Again, the parents are only responsible for what they could do, right? You cannot give more, like I almost said, you cannot give what you don't have. So if you did your best, you took care of your child in the best way possible, and still they are not, they don't succeed in their life, they choose the wrong path, We're going to suffer, yes, but it's our responsibility? No. We did our best. If they make their own wrong choices, it's their responsibility, right? I was reading a case today. There was someone in Brazil that killed his, like 45, 50, he killed his sister, and he was convicted, and he's going to jail for many years. And the mother said, I think it's fair. He needs to go to jail. He killed his sister. Can you imagine the suffering of this mother, that your son killed your daughter? So again, it's her. I have no idea how she raised them, and I'm not going to enter into those details. But you know, if you did your best to raise your child, and the child gets in the wrong path, we are eternal spirits. We make our own choices in the end. When we become adults, we are responsible for our own actions. We have our free will, and we are responsible. If we, and according to human laws, is like that, right? If you make something, you do something wrong after 18, you are responsible. Some places and countries, even depending on the crime, even before 18, you could be responsible. But on the contrary, if we are completely negligent, and we are a bad example for the children, and they become good adults, do we get the benefit? The answer is God is fair, so you can make your own conclusions, right? Of course, you're not going to get the benefit of something you didn't do, right? If a child is a good spirit and becomes a good adult, and you didn't have any part in it, you have nothing to claim from it, right? So because of course we are responsible for our own actions. If we didn't take care of the child, we didn't do our part. Whatever happened is the responsibility, right? The child is the merit or the responsibility of the child after they become adult. Okay? Okay, now we move to a completely different subject. It's the last one, and it's a complicated one also.
What is the mission of the conqueror whose only goal is to satisfy his ambition, and who, in order to reach that end, does not flinch at inflicting the misfortunes and disasters that he leaves in his wake? He is only an instrument used by God for the accomplishment of his designs, and those disasters are sometimes a means of making a country advance more rapidly. The good that may result from these passing events is extraneous to the person who was used to produce them, since it was nothing but a personal goal for him. Despite this, will he profit from that result? All are rewarded according to their works, the good they have wished to do, and the honor of their intentions. Incarnate spirits have occupations intrinsic to the nature of their physical existence. When errant or dematerialized, their occupations are proportionate to their degree of advancement. Some of them travel from world to world, acquiring education and preparing for a new incarnation. More advanced ones devote themselves to progress of humanity by directing the course of events and suggesting promising ideas. They assist incarnates of genius who help humankind as a whole advance. Others incarnate with a mission of progress. Others watch over individuals, families, societies, cities, countries, and populations, and become their guardian angels, protective spirits, and familiar spirits. Still others supervise the phenomena of nature, of which they are the immediate agents. The lower ranking spirits busy themselves with our engagements and take part in our pleasures. Impure and imperfect spirits suffer while waiting for the moment when God will give them the means of advancing. Can't see the rest. If they cause harm to others, It is out of spite of the happiness that they are not yet able to enjoy.
Okay, so here we have two parts. The question and answer from the spirits is one part. Kardec's comment, I think it's a comment that encompasses the whole chapter that talks about missions and occupations, right? When Kardec asks what is the mission of the conqueror, right? First, what we can ask ourselves, is it a mission, right? When someone, a conqueror is someone that conquers other places, right? That doesn't stay in their own place. So what is the mission of the conqueror? The mission would be in the sense of bringing progress and happiness to the places that he's conquering, right? So a good example from the time of Kardec of someone that came with a mission and failed in his mission was Napoleon, right? He came with a mission of spreading what France had in terms of liberty, equality, and fraternity to the rest of Europe. That was his mission. So it was not to invade and kill and dominate everyone. But of course, as an imperfect spirit, as a reincarnation of Julius Caesar, as some say he was, the conqueror in him was much stronger than the idea of spreading philosophical truths, right? So yes, he had a mission and he failed on his mission. Someone that invades another country just to destroy, you cannot say that this is a mission. This is a personal task, right? Now, when the Spirit says he's only an instrument used by God for the accomplishment of his designs, and these disasters are sometimes a means of making a country advance more rapidly, what the spirits are trying to say, and we are going to study very soon the law of destruction, sometimes destruction is necessary for progress. It's part of the law of progress. We have to destroy to build a better place, right? Now, how this destruction comes about is what makes the difference, right? So someone that I remember when one of those classes that we were studying Christianity and history of Christianity, or that he was talking about those that I think it was Cicero that used to invade just to free the countries and then leave, right? So you see a true missionary, that was before the time of Christ, I believe, right? He used to invade to free the people of the places that he invaded. So you can see that a missionary there. Is he going to, what his personal rewards in terms of his mission? He's going to get the rewards for what he did for the benefit of others. Of course, with us being perfect spirits, he's going to have to face the consequence of his own. I'm sure that when he invaded here or there, he must have killed some enemy he didn't like, right? I'm guessing. So he'll be responsible for those killings, but the benefit outweighs the mistakes, right? Which is what we mentioned here when we were talking about Martin Luther King and Mandela. The benefit to humanity outweighs their personal problems and issues, which are their own, right? So for someone to, for instance, Mother Teresa, I haven't spoken about her here. Those that live with her say that she was very difficult to live with because she was very focused and committed to do what she needed to do, and whoever was trying to who was in front of her, she didn't have much respect, in the sense of she would go over people that were trying to prevent her from doing what she was supposed to do. Does it matter for us? No, it doesn't, right? It probably mattered for that person that she ran over, right? That so there are people that talk. I've read books about the Mother Teresa, that people talking about her in the sense that she was not a nice person. But sometimes, in order for you to achieve things, you need to be tough. You need to be difficult, right? Because otherwise, people will not allow you to do what you are supposed to do. So, us as imperfect spirits, the missions of these people, if they are really on a mission, the result, the end result, is what matters. What happens in the middle, of course, it may be a problem, but we can only judge when we look back and we look from what we call a bird's eye view, right? The benefit that it brought for that region, for humankind, or whatever, right? So, as they say here, all are rewarded according to their works, the good they have wished to do, and the honor of their intentions. So if we are trying to do the best that we can, but we don't completely succeed because of things that go beyond our control, we will have the merit of having tried to do the best. And again, we live in society, so there are limitations what you can do, right? You know, you let's say you decide to work in to help feed the poor, right? There are government limitations, there are regulations, there are things that will go beyond your control. So you do the best of you that you can, but you are constrained by bureaucracy. You have done the best that you can. So you are going to be rewarded according to the work. And again, the reward is not an external reward. It's our conscience telling us that we did the best we could. If we live with a clean conscience, I did the best I could, even if I didn't succeeded because of this and that. If we are blaming others, it's a different story. But if we understand the limitations that we are facing when trying to fulfill our missions, and we did the best we can, then we are going to be rewarded by our own conscience, right? And then Kardec here on the comment, he talks about missions and occupations, right, in general terms. And that incarnate spirits have occupations intrinsic to the nature of their physical existence, right, according to where we live, according to our necessities, to our limitations. And when we are in the spiritual world, our occupations are proportional to our degree of advancement. Where we are going to find ourselves in the spiritual world, and the work that we are going to do in the spiritual world depends on where we are in the spiritual world, right? So we go to a place like Nosso Lar, which everyone talks about, that reads Nosso Lar, everyone who wants to go to Nosso Lar. Nosso Lar is the lowest level of organized spiritual colonies. We should wish for better places than Nosso Lar for ourselves. Unlikely, but possible. Nothing is impossible. But we arrive there. What can we do there? How can we best use our time there in Nosso Lar? It's according to our abilities, our desire to do, and our what we are asked to do, right? André Luiz, remember in the beginning of the book, right? He was a doctor here in the physical world. He arrived there. He's in the hospital. He wants to work in the hospital, and he starts by cleaning the hospital, right? Why? Because he didn't understand how things worked in the spiritual world. But he was humble enough to accept, after a certain time, to accept his own limitations and start from the very beginning. So how are we going to progress in the spiritual world by doing the best that we can with what is available to us and accepting our own limitations there, right? It's a challenge for us, right? Pride and vanity is something that we have to fight against, and it's going to accompany us back to the spiritual world. And when someone arrives there in spiritual world and tells us to start being a doorman, right, of a non solar, we're going to say, but I'm better than that. You start wrong there, right? So you're better than that. You're not going to even be doing that, right? Remember that woman that was never happy, and the non solar again, never happy with anything that was given to her, always complaining. You know, she's not making any progress or very little progress, because we always learn. So it's according to our own abilities and our acceptance of what we can do. And then it continues here about spirits that incarnate with mission of progress, spirits that are responsible for individuals, families, societies, cities, populations, and become guardian angels, protective spirits, familiar spirits. That was a very interesting question someone asked in one of these Q&A sessions this week that I thought it was very funny. The person asked, she said, I just sold my house and I know I have my protecting spirits. Are they going to go with me to the new house, or are they going to stay here in this house? And the answer, I thought the answer, I wouldn't answer like that, but he's very good at these answers. He said, well, there are two types of spirits. There are the ones that are familiar to you, and they are going to follow you wherever you go. And there are the ones responsible for the house that may be connected to the house, not connected to you. So those are going to stay with the house. It's a simple answer, right? But again, we have spirits that go look over, you know, are there spirits responsible for Manhattan, Bronx? Yes, there are. Spirits that above them, responsible for New York City, above them, New York State, above them, the United States, right? Spirits responsible for everything around us. And spirits, unknown incarnated spirits that are doing great jobs out there, and we never hear of them because they do their missions unknown to us, right? These are the true missionaries. They'll never say they are doing on a mission, because the very first characteristic of a true missionary is that they never recognize that they are missionaries. If someone arrives to you, if you hear those in the street, I'm a missionary, I'm the prophet, or I'm the Messiah, you can be sure they are not, because they will never say that. So Kardec then finishes talking about imperfect spirits, right, that suffer while waiting for the moment of receiving the means of advancing, and of the consequences of causing harm to others. So we're not going to go to the next item, because we start a new chapter 11, which is the three kingdoms. Very interesting. We're going to talk about mineral, plants, animals, and humans, and there's a lot to talk about this, but we don't have time today to talk about it. So we'll keep here if anyone has any questions, any comments, to close with missions and missions and occupations of the spirits. Anything I want to add here? No.
Yeah, the difficulty of associating mission and destruction, right? It's a hard thing to do, right? If you think that progress is a law, we must progress. If there is a group in a region of individuals who is defying that law, the law of progress, and a missionary sent there to bring progress regardless of what they understand as status quo, we should expect conflict. We should expect that this missionary will gonna have to impose himself, and sometimes violently, in order to bring the progress necessary to that community. So it's almost, if it's that destruction, yes, law necessary for the law of progress, but it's a karma that collective that people accumulate to themselves for denying a law, a natural law being the law of progress.
Yeah, it's always difficult, right? Because in the times we live today, in times of violence, and we see a lot of aggressions in terms of, I'm not talking about personal, robberies or gangs or things like that. But when we're talking about those that are using other methods of trying to control people, right? It's difficult for us. Many times it's difficult for us to judge in the moment of when things are happening, right? We may have to look back and see the result of it, right? Again, I'm going to mention the Black Plague in Europe, right? They destroyed half of or 2/3 of the population of Europe, but brought Renaissance, brought a huge progress. We were stuck for 1,000 years. So how can we move on from that difficulty that we placed ourselves as incarnate collectivity, that we were preventing Earth from evolving, from moving forward? Sometimes things have to happen, and the spirits they have a better understanding of our necessities, that sometimes the destruction is necessary. And Jesus said, right, I didn't come to bring peace, I came to bring the sword. Sometimes what he said that
Violence unnecessary, woe to whom?
woe to whom, yes, exactly that. Woe to whom could cause the calamity, right? So there will be people that will carry these destructive missions out of necessity for humankind. Of course, for us to judge while these things are happening, it's not possible, because we are too much involved with it, personally involved with it, right? Even if it's living in this world, something happening, let's say in Africa, that we have nothing to, it's not directly related to us here now, but for us to judge if what's happening is for that benefit of that region and that people, we can't. We can judge abuses, we can condemn the abuses, we can condemn the unnecessary killings, but a larger movement of what's happening may be for the benefit of a group. When we can analyze the Romans, right? The Romans are always looked at as invaders, as dominant of other people. But if you look carefully what the Romans brought to us in terms of advancement, progress that the Roman civilization brought to us, you can watch in terms of engineer, in terms of laws. We use the Roman laws until today.
Urbanization.
Yes, urbanization. In Rome, the city of Rome still uses the sewage that was constructed by the Romans. So did they abuse? There's always abuse, right? But did they help us a lot? Absolutely, right? Of course, we Christians, we talk about persecutions of the Romans to the Christians and the killings. We're not going to say that this is acceptable. It was not. But we cannot discard the progress that they brought to us. So we can only analyze now, looking back and analyzing what good they brought, and of course the harm they caused to some, the persecutions and everything. But it is always, you just have to read Emmanuel's life, right? As the senator and later as a slave and everything. You see, the individual responsibilities are individual in the end, but the mission, the benefit for a larger group is in the end what really counts. Okay. All right, so we stop here. For this Sunday, for this Saturday, we have a lecture by Al Turi from Florida, The Good News. I think it's based on the book by Humberto de Campos, through the psychography of Chico Xavier, but I'm not sure. This Sunday is the 5th Sunday of the month, so we're going to go back to the book Jesus in the Home, 3 chapters. And also, on Mondays, starting 3 weeks, we're going to start using a new book called Words of Eternal Life that we have available for sale both here at the center and at our website, sgny.org, if you're interested in purchasing it, okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer, please?
Certainly. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Elmo, and everyone who is participating. Thank you also, Philip, for reading for us this evening. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 2, Chapter 10, Spirit, Occupations, and Missions. Work that benefits others is considered an important mission, regardless of historical timelines and circumstances. People of genius abilities help all of us to move forward. Importantly, parents indeed assist their children to develop and evolve morally and intellectually, which is a very important mission. All of us are rewarded according to the work done. What is the intention? What is the mission? Is there benefit to humanity? Is there intentional destruction? There is cause and consequence. However, we try to live with a clean conscience and do the best effort, and we also must accept our limitations. This is the natural law of progress. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritus centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.